Hey, Shelly.
Hey Eric, how are you?
Not too bad. How about yourself?
Good. I'm gonna go ahead and make you host.
Okay, perfect.
And can I jump off? Are you okay to let people in or?
Yeah, that should be good.
Okay. All right. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Matt. Hey, Melinda.
How's it going?
Not too bad. I didn't think we were supposed to be getting this snow tonight. That kind of took me by surprise.
Oh, I did see that it was coming, but it isn't supposed to be much.
That's good.
As long as it's not below zero again, that's...
No kidding. It felt like back in Iowa. It was cold Midwest winters.
Yeah, back there it's not a dry cold, so it's... My family has an ongoing joke with the... When my parents first moved here, my dad was from Virginia, and he asked my mom, "Doesn't it get cold in Colorado?" And she told him, "Well, yes, but it's a dry cold, so you don't notice it." And a year or so later, they one of the worst winters in history, and he had just come in from shoveling off the porch roof so it wouldn't collapse, and just came in and said, "You may not notice it." So now it's a dry cold is a joke phrase in our family.
Totally get that. It's like a
Yeah.
damp, bone-chilling cold.
Yeah.
Hi guys, sorry, I was having trouble with interface.
Yeah, it was a little different this time, and yeah, thanks for.
Nope. Okay, I'm promoting you as panelists. I had first just said allow to talk, but now everybody should be in.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, as you were saying with the cold on the weekend, it was definitely not do much weekend, just kind of little.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I thought I was being pretty brave to go out and scrape the sidewalks at 2 degrees. So, but what's that Norwegian expression? There's no such thing as bad weather, just poor clothing choices. So,
yeah, I about had to bust out my base layers just to hang around the house this weekend.
Eric, it's funny you say that. I wonder if my house is poorly insulated on days like that, because I am wearing sweaters and occasionally even a coat indoors. It's that cold.
Yeah.
I was putting on my like wool ski socks.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, being a spinster, I have lots of wool. So I have wool socks and wool sweaters and all of those things. So
I think that makes you a true Coloradan when you have a healthy supply of wool.
Yep. It's the miracle fiber.
Yep.
When it gets wet, it gives off heat. So there's Cash.
There we go.
Hey.
Sorry, guys. There we go. Had to help CJ get connected. Something was.
And I just got her in.
And there's CJ. All right. Yeah.
Okay, so, and I know Lauren had emailed me earlier today and said she was not going to be able to make it tonight. So we can go ahead and get started. Linda, if you would like to call the meeting to order.
Yes, let's come to order. I have it as 6:34 p.m. And Eric, do you want to call the roll?
I will call the roll.
All right,
Chair Melinda Ellswick,
here.
Vice Chair Jason O'Brien,
Here.
That's a funky, weird smile you have there, Jason.
DJ,
Here.
Matthew Crabtree,
Did you hear me?
no,
Can you hear me?
yes, now I can.
Okay. Here.
Thank you. Cash Parker.
I saw him. I
Yeah,
don't see
where'd he
him.
go?
Oh, hold on. Think of my, he's,
This is terrible. This is like the first time I'm seeing a mirror. This is like gross.
there's somebody that had called in, but I don't know if that is Cash or not.
Well, he was physically there before. It could be Cash. Is that you, Cash? 720-980-4138.
Okay, we'll come back to Cash if he happens to come back in. Helene Federici,
Here.
right? Councilmember Dave Cuesta
Present.
and staff Eric Sampson and staff
Madeline.
Madeline, thank you. It's been a long day.
And Cash has reappeared.
Yeah, sorry, I was having audio difficulties with my computer. I'm here.
Okay, cool. All right, so Cash Parker.
Who's that?
And Lauren Cooper is absent. So, okay, we can move on to approval of minute.
We will approve the minutes, yeah. We have two sets of minutes to approve. First was our regular meeting on January 20th. And then the second was our special meeting on the 27th, which lasted all of 20 minutes. So
It was long.
does anyone have any amendments or modifications to either set of minutes?
I do not. I would move to approve both minutes as is.
Second,
All in favor, would you say aye?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Hey, excuse me, this is Nancy. Hey, Eric,
Yes.
Alex is on as an attendee. For some reason, he could not get in. Can you
Okay.
try to unmute him? I cannot do it.
Okay, yeah. I can go ask to unmute.
I've done that too. Let me see.
And I don't know. And I resent him the link as well.
Yeah, me too. Let me try to resend in the link.
Okay.
Okay, sorry to interrupt, guys.
No, it's okay. Okay, can I get the first and second again for those minutes?
first was Jason, second was CJ.
Thank you. And it was unanimous, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving on.
Now we're on to public forum. Is that the telephone that's showing there?
So that is actually Alex Dorotic, the city attorney, and he's trying to get on the video call. So we're
Can
having
you just go to your office and get on that way?
I'm not in my office.
Huh? Oh,
I'm not
how
in my-
about Nancy or somebody? Or Madeline? Anybody there?
So we tried sending him the link again.
So quick point on that. CJ was having trouble with the link just a little bit ago, and I think there may be a problem with the link again.
But Matt sent me something and I got in because of Matt. So Matt, why don't you send it to Alex?
If I could do that. Let me see if I can figure out what the problem is here. I think the problem is the link itself. Okay, so that works.
It wasn't me.
I don't think it was you. I think this happened once before with the link. I could be wrong on it, but is he getting an error? What is he getting when he tries?
Yeah, he's just been able to. Okay, so we're trying the link again.
Because it said invalid for me.
I had to click, it said invalid, and then I had to click join as an attendee.
Well, that's what I had done too.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I had done as well. Let's see.
So
Then I had to enter the passcode.
Yeah, you had to enter the passcode this time.
Yeah.
So I believe in the email, let's see, open link new tab.
Yeah, the passcode is in the email.
Can you
No.
text it to Alex though, Matt?
I can. What's Alex's email?
Or texting, I was thinking 720-980.
Oh, is he on? Well, if he's on his computer, maybe I'll just email the link that I emailed you to him.
Oh, hold on. It looks like we might have him here. Hold on just a second.
Oh, well, the phone call dropped off.
Oh,
Oh, look at that.
okay, Alex.
Yay.
Unmute.
All right.
That was more work than I've ever spent to get to a meeting. You're gonna make this one worth it, though.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Then our next
no
item
public.
is the discussion of our modifications to 16611, I believe.
Yes, Alex is here to discuss the landmark protection language and moving forward with code rewrites and whatnot.
What is Alex's position? Forgive me for asking.
I am the interim city attorney.
Are you going to be the city attorney?
That's not my decision.
Ah, I wanted the inside scoop.
So do I.
Real quickly, Alex has done terrific in the interim role, and I'm not sure how it will shake out either, but he would certainly be welcomed as a city attorney. We'll see how that goes. I don't know either.
All right, Alex, you got the floor.
Well, so my goal in coming here and talking to all of you is really give you the framework for how you as a board and commission can best operate and best work within the sort of charge you're given by the city council. And so what I think oftentimes gets confused for boards and commissions is you feel like you have to do all of the work, if you will, in anything you want to bring forward. You have to figure out the language and the legalese. And that's a real misnomer. Your job as a board and commission, the best analogy I can come up with is well, it probably doesn't work anymore since we don't do this as much anymore, but it's like you're a patron at a restaurant. You get to decide what you want to order. You can have discussions with the chef about how you want it prepared and things like that. But the actual preparation comes down to typically the city attorney's office, especially if we're looking at code changes, which is, I believe, what you're looking at with this historic preservation, with your historic preservation code amendments. So the most efficient way for this to happen is for you to talk and decide how you want historic preservation to work. Don't worry about the magic language, and certainly I can assist with that and we can discuss it, but don't let that be the thrust of what you're doing and worrying about the specific language, because that's my burden.
But Alex, I mean, someone did ask for the recipe, so we had to give the cook the recipe. So that's what we did.
And
So it
and I don't know
changed.
why that would be. I mean, to be honest, what's much more straightforward is for you to say, you know what, I want, now I'm blanking on any specific order from a restaurant, but I want a medium rare flank steak with some sort of sauce on it, and it's late in the day, so maybe some green beans. And I say, well, we could do it these number of ways, and then we sort of back and forth. And then once you have those ideas together, you go to city council and say, hey, this is what we're thinking, because city council is the one that actually has to weigh in on any code changes that has to happen, that they may want to have happen, and to approve those. So you don't have to.
Give to the lawyers.
I am the lawyer.
I know, but we were told to do what we did. So
and I'm not faulting you.
Can you take the information we've given you and just go from there?
Certainly. And see what I got from forward by staff was basically a relatively written, to be frank, relatively well-written piece of code. But what is helpful to get is what you actually want the code to say, what your goals are, and to discuss those in really sort of basic terms, and then flesh out from there. And I apologize, because I know that I would certainly feel, if I were in your instance, well, wait, why did we go through all that? It's a lot of work. And
well, it's been
right.
3 months.
And I sincerely apologize for that. And that is not, I certainly don't want to fault anyone. If it should be anyone's fault, it's my office, because we should have done more robust training with boards and commissions and with liaisons from staff, because a lot of times they are just sort of assigned to that, and they're doing the best that they can. So if there's any fault, it's with my office.
Alex, briefly, so this conversation had begun initially with City Attorney McKinney Brown, your predecessor. So I can forward you those communications as well, and it might shed some light here. I think that this group followed the process as they were instructed with Ms. McKinney Brown. And so I'd like to get that over to you. I'm happy to hear that you think it's a well-written communication, because I thought it was great too. But I understand if you want to touch it up. I mean, to me, the end goal here should be, can we get the will of this group through council? And what language would best suit that? And if that means we still need to do some fine tuning, I'd rather we get it to a place that we can get it through council. I mean, even if that takes a little bit more time, which again, this group has spent plenty of meetings on it and been diligent about it. So I hate to more time on it, but again, if end goal is passing council, that would still be my objective in getting the will of this group completed.
Well, I'll jump in here.
Okay.
Sorry, go on real fast, Alex. So if I'm kind of if I understand and translating correctly with what you're saying, is that getting the actual code language itself leaves out some context that could assist with terminating the statements and making sure that things are properly understood that are going into the code. Is that right?
Matt, that is exactly right.
Okay. So another interesting thing, though, about our commission is that we have a lot of very talented people on here that have a lot of history and experience with historic preservation commissions and other. It's been a long day. Having the same brain fart you did a little bit ago here, but other experience with historic organizations. That was the word I was trying to find. So what we did is we actually researched. We kind of went around to the solutions that other organizations and other cities and other places had come to, and then incorporated that in. I think we could potentially, I'm not speaking for the rest of the commission here, but we could provide context around each one of the entries we have in there. But a lot of the research that was done was based upon experience. I know, Jason, you're heavily involved with a lot of the language that we put in there, and that was from actual real acting language in other cities and other places. Is that right, Jason?
Yeah, correct. And I know I mentioned for the other step up for you, Alex. Yeah, a lot of that was, other folks, including, Cash and some other people looked at a lot of comparative cities, but then also one thing what I drew from a lot was there's template language from History Colorado, which is where I work for their certified local government program. And so yeah, that was kind of where that stuff came through. If it looked pretty good, it was because it was a lot of copy and paste type stuff of, certainly from my end. But yeah, I guess kind of, how Matt framed it too with context. I think it's, what we've been working through as far as, maybe we started with specifics of code language, but that was also, kind of ourselves working through what we wanted. So I think it would be relatively easy to provide you some kind of context on what those more specific areas what we're driving towards.
And don't misunderstand, my role and goal is to assist you all with expressing to council what you want or what you recommend, and then take what council says with that and put it into code language. And there's kind of two goals in writing code. It's to pass legal muster and to have the legal effect that you want, but also provide the guidance to non-lawyers so that if your average, Susie citizen, if you want to call her that, reads it, the chances are that citizen will understand it and be able to apply the code in a meaningful way. And again, there's nothing wrong with what you've written. I'm not faulting it or saying it's actually, believe me, I've certainly been in positions with other things, even written by, likely and usually written by attorneys that are a lot less poorly written and a lot less thought out. And I'm not saying that this has to be scrapped, or I'm not saying any of that. Really, if the whole goal is, can we take what the intent of your recommendations are, meaningfully present them to city council, and then city council can make whatever decision city council wants. Although, to be frank, typically city council really respects the work done of boards and commissions, and if it's presented in a meaningful way, city council goes, okay, well, we will adopt things unless we have a real problem with them. And then it comes back to me to rewrite it, but the goal is to take what your thoughts are and what city council's decision is, and then make it into both something that's holds up legally, and also is something that can be used by the common or non-legally oriented citizen to understand what the expectations are.
So do we have to reinvent the wheel? You can't just use the
No.
wheel we gave you?
We certainly can. And if what you have is what you are happy with, in looking at it, I'm not saying there's a problem with that. I mean, what my goal in coming here to do today is to sort of give you, first, make sure that you understand the process, if you will, and then also make sure that I understand what your goals in enacting this is. And there are a couple of things where there may be, staff says there's an issue with this, or there may be a legal issue with that. And I've read it, but I haven't read it with the specific fine-tooth comb, only because I knew I was going to come here today and be able to talk to you and make sure that I understood what your goals in writing it are, because I didn't want to spend the hours necessary to go through it. If we're going to have this conversation, then that's time that wouldn't be effective. Does that make sense?
Alex, I just want to say I didn't contribute a lot to the writing because there is so much talent in the commission, and everybody was really, I think, did an excellent job writing it. But the whole time, I think everyone was acknowledging that it would eventually have to go through city council and go through legal muster. I don't think anybody ever thought we just wrote code and it was going to be it's done. I think we are aware of that process, actually. And so, and I think that because we have so many talented people on the commission, Lauren's not here, but she has an advanced degree in historic preservation. Matt is the president of the Inglewood Historic Society. So we do have all of that. I think there was just some initiative taken to be as clear as possible instead of just speaking in generalities. So I just wanted to say that, because I remember we talked about city council taking, passing it through them throughout the process. So I just wanted to let you know we were on that page.
And I appreciate that. And I'm not faulting anyone, or, I mean, in many ways, I'm in some ways trying not to come in and say, okay, we got to do this, because that's not the point at all. My point is to understand your goals in writing this, and then read through what you've written and make sure that it meets those goals. Because it's not my place to have any position about how historic preservation should go. You all are far more experienced. You've put more effort into it, and it's really council's ultimate job to make that decision. But please don't hear any fault or anything else. The only message I want to give is I can help you, and that oftentimes, and this isn't the best example, because again, when I look at what you've written, it's scholarly, but oftentimes sometimes boards and commissions will get bogged down in arguing over the legalese when that's not really the role. And it doesn't seem like that's what's really happened here. It seems like you've come
Alex,
to a
we've already worked on this stuff for over 7 hours.
Yeah.
If Jason just talked to you one-on-one,
that would be absolutely fine with me. And I'm very open to that. And in the end, there's no reason why it can't work that way, because ultimately the goal is to send something to council and say, it can be done one of two ways. It can either be done through study session and asking council's opinion on it, or it can be, this is what we want and this is what we're trying to do, and then council's faced with sort of an up or down vote. And you could certainly discuss with Councilmember Cuesta what he thinks is a better route, because he'll have a better sense of whether or not this is something that council will really want to dig into and sort of change things with, or whether it's something that's likely to be adopted. And council can always change their mind one way or the other, and that's sort of the way legislation works. But I'm happy to meet with Jason and go through and make sure that I understand the goals of it. And then what I would also suggest is a process where Jason or someone else from your group meets with staff and make sure that there aren't any things that staff are going to be say objecting to because of unworkability issues or other issues that may get in the way of it. Because certainly if the Historic Preservation Commission says this is what we want and staff is saying it won't work for these reasons, it's not going to go very far with council, because at the very least council is going to want to sort of parse through all of that. The best way is when you come through with, this is what staff wants, this is what historic preservation wants, this is what the goal of this is, and then you have a very clear message you're giving to council, and council is going to make a decision, but council then at least has the confidence of knowing everyone who's looked at this, who cares about these areas, is on the same page.
Can I just jump in here and give some background, if you will? That original ordinance that established the Historic Preservation Commission was written a number of years before the city actually got around to establishing the commission. And when it was written, they really didn't know what a commission would be doing or was supposed to do, just that they thought they ought to have one. When we formed, we started out by, establishing our bylaws, but also our goals and objectives of what we wanted to be. And this is pretty much an outgrowth of our goals and objectives. And we realized that ordinances are like way out of date and has no teeth in it. And so we pretty much did all of this because we'd like a little more say in, and we're not asking for the moon. Just, you know, if we've designated something as a historic landmark, we'd like for them to ask our approval before they tear it down. You know, little small things like that. And would any of the others agree with that or disagree?
Sure, absolutely. That's a good foundation for this. Dave, you wanted to say something?
Yeah,
there.
I mean, I guess procedurally moving forward, if the group is comfortable with Jason speaking with the city attorney, I wouldn't mind sitting in either, just so that when this does get to council, I can make sure that I'm messaging correctly and getting everything across as well as I can. But I just want to make sure everybody is comfortable that if it's just Jason or if other folks would care to join as well. I imagine it's an open forum for whoever would like to.
I would like to, as staff liaison, be in that meeting as well.
Sure.
The only issue with additional people beyond 2 is that it creates an open meeting issue, which is fine. We could schedule it as a meeting, and that may be a better way of doing it. And just with the specific goal of having Jason, Dave, and Eric walk me through the goals of it and have me ask questions. The only concern being open meeting if we have a number of attendees, which is fine. It's certainly not a secret.
I look forward to hearing everybody else's thoughts. I don't mind that. Then it just does create the public record. It's something we can point to as it gets in front of council and move towards council, as opposed to, yeah, I don't know, Dave and Alex and Jason spoke somewhere sometime. So it might put just a bit more of an official stamp on it.
And I throw the idea that we had planned on a study session.
And now, I'm glad you brought that up, CJ. I'm thinking this takes place ahead, and I invite other thoughts or direction here. I'm thinking this takes place ahead of the study session, so that we've got it orderly. And again, you know, I've hopefully got the messaging down too that we're looking to get across. And not that it's a finished. Well, I guess it's as finished a draft as we can present, and then we see what council has to say, and then adjust from there. Is that what you guys were thinking as well, or CJ? Do you think? Would you prefer we take it in its current form to council and then meet with city attorney after getting feedback from council?
I would definitely prefer to meet first, because what frequently happens, especially with things that have a legal implication, is someone on council asks me a question and I can address the legal issue, but if we have a conversation first, then I know what the focus of what you're trying to accomplish is, so I can answer that question much more meaningfully.
And I should say this too. I am happy to go either way, and it's certainly it's the commission of the citizens, and you guys should certainly decide how you'd like to proceed. But either one is certainly fine to me. Meeting prior to council and you know, fine tuning wherever we might need to, or waiting for council's points and then doing that fine tuning afterwards. I mean, there's the chance that if we fine tune it enough, it might go through. We might be able to do this in a single visit to council. And I say that with fingers crossed, because that isn't always the case.
Or it might not and get totally shot down. And then what do we do? So my whole thing.
I think it has a better chance going through someone representing legal first, because then those answers, at least that's out of the way, and council doesn't have to have those questions in mind.
But we're creating more work for the building department. So do you know what I mean?
Well, I think a study session as well, when it finally goes to study session before council, that should be a litmus test to see how council is going to react to some of that, the landmark protection language.
So may I propose that you guys do that meeting thing and the 4 of you guys get together and do what you need to do so Alice can catch up, and then we move forward?
May we confirm that Jason is willing to do this?
Oops.
Yes.
No, nope, that would
I'll buy
work.
you a soda, Jason.
No, that would work. And, as far as kind of, just kind of noting scheduling wise too, teleworking obviously gives me a little more flexibility when to meet. So I know that, three of you are all busy and have other responsibilities too for, the city wise. But yeah, if there's something like, I don't know how you guys usually do things, if there's like a doodle poll or something, or try to nail something down. But with the exception of conflicting meetings, I should be pretty flexible on when I could do that.
And Jason, would you need any support from any of us for that meeting? I mean, we're kind of throwing you out there individually to interpret all this. Would you need our help or support?
Yeah, I guess trying to think of the best way, we have minutes, but it may be kind of worthwhile, perhaps, if there's a way to see kind of thoughts on those specific things we put into the code revision that we're looking for, that people were kind of hoping for. I know we had a lot of discussion about, again, kind of say on design review and things like that. But yeah, I'm just trying to think what would be the most assistance in making sure I've represented everything good would be helpful. I'm just trying to think of the best way to.
Well, and Jason, I like the point you're making there. And I hope the group isn't feeling too discouraged here. I'm hoping that this does go in front of Alex, and we're not bringing back a different document. It's pretty similar to what we've got now. And we've again, just maybe fine-tuned a few things. If there are drastic changes that need to be made, I'd almost prefer it comes back to this group before council, so that everybody is if we need to, Alex finds something that is just, let's say, just out of whack, but just, quite different from how it's been written so far. I want this group to be comfortable, of course, before we go before council. And is it still getting across the mission that we're trying to get to here? So to me, I think it'd be worth, I don't know how maybe we can do that through email. I'm getting a bit out of my realm here in terms of the open meetings, and can we just circulate that after we meet?
If you do it through email, you're getting closer to open meetings, and it would probably be more effective to just be able to have a back and forth. And what I can do is go through, give you a list of questions, but then we meet with those questions to make it more efficient.
Yeah.
And I'm in complete agreement with you, Councilmember Cuesta, that if there's fine tuning things, that's one thing. But if it's if I say to Jason, this really can't be done that way, and Jason says, well, that's really the way we want it, it has to come back to you, to your group, because now it's not the document that you proposed. And so, and I'm happy to sort of explain why, because I think you deserve the why. It's, it's certainly unavailing to get you can't do this sort of shutdown, and then not, there's nothing that I saw on going through it, but again, it's a long enough document where I don't want to say with absolute confidence, but there's certainly nothing that jumped out where I thought you absolutely cannot do this legally. But I also want to be able to have the conversation about, this is the legal effect of this. So this is what I will tell council, or if council asks, I will say this about this specific point, so that you also know what you're setting up. But I didn't see anything that is a deal breaker from the start where I would be in the position telling council, this is illegal if you pass this. Sure. There's nothing like that, but there may be things that we go through where, well, I don't want to presuppose anything or go too far without having gone without speaking in specifics. But I think that if we do get to a point where it doesn't feel the same anymore, it has to come back.
Well, in CG, I know that you've highlighted how much work this group has put in, and it's a tremendous amount of work. And again, I think that speaks to how I think we polished this document is now. So in terms of timeline, I was thinking that this group might even be able to get into one of the March study sessions. Let's say, though, that we met with Alex between now and our next meeting, and then this group can meet again with all the suggested revisions that Alex might have at our March meeting, and then that we aim for getting in front of council before April. That to me would be one potential timeline, but I'm not sure if that pushes things out further than this group would like.
It is what it is.
My understanding is that it takes time to to arrange the study session. And so can we move to begin that process now? And I think that's the earliest timeline from what I've heard about how long it takes to get the study sessions.
Yeah, I raised in January that we would like to get in front of council for a study session. And then that raised that annually we're supposed to meet with all boards and commissions. So let's start getting those. I asked that this commission end up in the front end of the scheduling preferably. And then the thought was that we would begin that in March. So that's why I think I can still push that back to April. If then that would give us the time review with the city attorney. We have our scheduled meeting in March. Go over any revisions that Alex has, and then hopefully present before study session in April. And you're right, Colleen, that none of this stuff moves too quickly. And you know, there's 2 study sessions a month, so you can get pushed back to the following month pretty quickly.
Do we have to like vote on starting that process for a study session, or how do we, what's the first step to getting that ball rolling?
I would say, and this is just, and I would invite the perspective of staff here. To me, it's just you guys think we're ready to go. Dave, go tell council that we want the next slot that's available.
It's
Well,
it's very manageable.
This, though, weren't we going to also present our landmark and the Scarrett House and, you know, what we're doing with the landmark group? Weren't we also going to present that?
And I think Cinderella City as well. I think we were planning on grouping a few items together.
It was basically all our work, even the map.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, that would, if it's our time before the council, then we present our work and not just the ordinance, but like you say, the Scarrett House and Cinderella City and our historic maps and everything else. So
Is it advisable to do it all at once if we've got a big thing on the agenda though? Because I mean, Dave, Alex, I mean, that's obviously we want the legal language to be correct. And I don't know, I guess there's 2 parts to this, but I'll start with that one.
Well, I guess it's just more to procedurally for the meeting. How much time can we get? And then does that give us enough time to cover the topics just outlined? And then how do we divvy up that time? And I know that those are hard to do rigidly. Once you get in front of council, it can shift a little bit. But let me reach out to, it's the mayor and mayor pro tem that do these scheduling. So let me reach out to them this week and just see what they have in mind for each group, including each group, board and commission that comes in front of them. And let me ask you guys this: do you have any idea of it in a perfect world, how much time you might need to cover all those subjects? It might be hard to estimate.
30 minutes. At
well,
least.
the last time we presented to council, we were allotted 30 minutes, and because there was so many other things going on that jumped in front of us, we were squeezed into like 20 minutes and really didn't, I think, get a chance to do a very effective presentation. That with all of those things, I would like us to have, say 45 minutes.
Okay. I was gonna say, I don't think 30 is unreasonable. Let me see if let me reach out and see if we could schedule for 45. But
I think there's 4 topics.
Yeah, I think it's too much for one meeting. Personally, I think the code is like its own meeting. And then I think all the landmarks and the map and Cinderella City is like a different thing. So I know for Cinderella City, somebody's going to want to make a preservation. I think it's going to be very too much kind of going on if there's going to be any work done on the code part. Like I think everybody needs to be focused on that in a way. And I don't know if you can do all 4.
Well, by the time we present to council, we would have completed the work on the code stuff. So it's.
Do you anticipate like back and forth with council, or would the council members like get into the details at that point?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that would be their opportunity to get into the details, yes. because when it actually comes before council in the actual council meeting, then it's actually part of the whole Unified Development Code approval. So it's an up or down vote for council. Is that not correct, Dave?
Yeah, so I think there's one of two possibilities coming out. Group presents the language as everybody agrees to it, and council says, okay, it looks good, we like it. Please bring it before a formal meeting, and then it would get its 2 votes, first hearing, second hearing. Or there might be the request that, can we tweak this? Can we change that? And then in many cases, those changes are made, and then it just goes before council. There isn't another study session. Unless it's something that it's really a deeper issue and council feels they need more information, then it could trigger a second study session. But one way or another, if it's small changes or they like it as presented, it should just move forward to that regular meeting.
Is it possible, just as an alternate path, to have 2 study sessions, one dedicated to the code and then the other for the Cinderella City and landmark discussion and map discussion, just 2 separate meetings?
I don't think that's too big a request. I'll put that request into the mayor pro tem and mayor when we conclude this evening. I don't think that's too big a request. Let me ask you this. Of the 2, I assume we'd want to get the code language in front of council first. If they say, in terms of scheduling, what's your priority? Is it safe to say that's the priority of the group? Okay. Okay, very good. Well, let me start with that and let them know that that was the thing of greatest importance and where we'd like to spend our first time, and then follow up with them on those other 3 issues.
Thanks,
I think
Elena.
things like this Garrett House designation doesn't really need to go to a study session first. It's just
It was just a
our
present.
work product that we bring to council.
I think it was just the presentation of the landmark program moving forward. I think that's what it was really just saying. And Scarrett was going to be hopefully our first one, since it was the first house in Inglewood.
Yep.
So I think it was more a presentation, not a permission.
It's like the pilot. It's like the pilot
Yeah.
landmark project.
Well,
It goes well with the Cinderella City and the historic map content, sort of as a collection of topics. I don't know that that's the best way to split them. It was just an idea.
Well,
think that
and
makes
Cinderella
sense.
City certainly picking up is a conversation piece. Needless to say, redevelopment's coming up amongst council and staff. I know that there's certainly a citizens movement to see what can be done to preserve all or portions of it. So, I mean, that's topical right now as well.
If we're waiting till April for the code meeting, even though it's a bigger priority, would we be able to meet sooner about the other issues? And I don't know what the timeline is or what the urgency is for Cinderella City. So if we weren't meeting till April about code and we were intentionally placing that after, would we be in any kind of jeopardy of being too late to have our presentation about that?
I'm a bit, I say this sheepishly, I am not entirely sure of the Cinderella City timeline as well. That has really been a moving target, and there's been different conversations with different groups that have various interests for it. Eric, offhand, do you know where that happens to stand? I know it's been Brad doing a lion's share of the work on that.
Yeah, that's been a lot of Brad and John Vorbrel, our long range planner. And the last I heard, they were going to try to get it rezoned to, I think, an MUB1 district. Don't hold me to that, but that is the last that I've heard about that project. So I know it's not moving ahead. It's not going full speed ahead by any means. So there would be time for in the future for you guys to present your thoughts on the Cinderella City and the history surrounding it.
And that's a good point. There's certainly nothing imminent coming before council. There'd be several hearings. I think that there'd be, public comment sessions, just independent. So I would imagine any changes to Cinderella City are months away at this point. I mean, I would be told I'd be surprised if something gets done in 2021, a final decision on the building.
Okay. What's the timeline with any kind of code changes? Because I know there's been a more of an overall review I believe, all of Title 16, if I'm correct on that. Is that right, Dave?
That is correct. Now, Eric, I think this would move independent of that, but please give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, kind of, we're looking at two different items here. The big one is the landmark protection language. That's really what we want to get fleshed out with council and get in the books. And then the other half part of that is the Title 16 rewrite language, which kind of, they're going to end up in the same place in the code in the Title 16, but the landmark protection language definitely takes precedent in terms of moving forward with one of the items sooner than the other one. I don't know how that's going to conflict with the entire Title 16 rewrite, but that was my thought, is to get moving forward with the landmark protections.
Well, and one other cynical comment is my experience has been it sometimes takes several tries to get on the agenda for a study session because other things keep coming up. So,
And you know, Melinda, that's not cynical. That's true. That certainly happens sometime. It's been a little bit slower for us lately. I mean, it's never to stand still, but it hasn't been quite as packed, the recent agendas for study session. So I'm hoping there's a gap. Council's certainly overdue to meet with their boards and commissions. So I think this is taking a pretty high priority.
great. So we officially resolve that we're going to appoint Jason as a subcommittee of one to enter into some explanations and discussions on our proposed changes.
That works for me.
And maybe the most efficient way to do it so that we're definitely not running afoul of open meeting is for just myself, Jason, and Dave to come up with a time to meet, and then come back and present to all of you, as David suggested, in March, with the plan of then going to council in April. I think that's kind of where we're at anyway. And then Eric, I'll communicate separately with you about any sort of staff concerns. And you know, my goal would be to this is what I'm gonna do within the next week, is read through and send back to you, Jason, and you, Dave. This is how I read this, and any potential legal issues, which I don't see any really big ones, but this is what this means legally, and make sure that that's what's captured, and then maybe some smaller suggestions for language tweaks, or perhaps there's some staff suggestions about what may or may not be viable. But I'll get that done, then we can come up with the time to meet, and then we'll come back and present to all of you.
That sounds fair. Yeah, thanks, Alex.
Yeah, thanks, Alex.
All right. Let us move on then to our next topic, which is the historic neighborhood mapping that CJ and Helene have worked on. And
I don't mean to interrupt, but with your indulgence, I'm going to leave the meeting. I actually have to pick up my daughter from gymnastics.
Okay.
So thank you much for having
Thank you,
me.
Alex.
And
Thanks,
I will
Alex.
get with Jason and Dave.
So we're pretty much where we were the last time that we gave our update on our end. But there's a little confusion just about the map project that Madeline's working on and the one that we're working on, and sort of how they are different and similar and all of that. And so maybe we can have that discussion.
yeah, I actually put that in the new business, but it is actually part of the whole mapping project that if we're attempting to, as I understand, present history of Inglewood in map format. kind of, which is, and Madeline is working on Englewood as it is today. And so these are actually two different projects.
Well, so real fast on this too, and Madeline, I want to hear what where your update is on this and kind of where we're at and background and intent, but also to provide a little bit of context in the situation. When we were first formed as a commission, one of the ideas that we had come up with was to designate community areas based upon actual real communities that exist within our city. Not
that was our
made
first
up
request as a commission, I think.
Exactly. That was something we all got together and we said, hey, that would be a really great idea. And this was before Sean was city manager. And our intent with doing so was to create a strong community feel, community pockets and neighborhoods that could associate with one another, and what eventually I think would be coined with later efforts as a neighborhood kind of identification or placemaking, I guess, if I'm correct on the verbiage there. There are a lot of communities that exist that are outside of council districts, that are outside of parks and areas. Melinda, you and I, we live in Broadway Strayers Heights.
Yeah.
So kind of with the framing of that was our intent as a commission. I guess with your permission, Melinda, if we could open the floor for Madeline to kind of explain where we're at with this right now, and if there's been any other updates.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we obviously talked about this last meeting, and after the meeting, I reached out to Helene, and we were just talking about the project. And I definitely think you guys are right. These are two separate projects. One is historical record keeping, and one is today's neighborhoods. So I think what we're going to do on the communications team is take the awesome historical map that this committee created and bring it to the public and ask them, you know, where do you see your neighborhood? Does anyone want to step up and lead this neighborhood? We need liaisons. How do you feel about the boundaries? But then this historical map will always, you know, live on our website, and it will always just be the historical map that we refer to.
I think actually that there's not necessarily agreement on that distinction. So you're distinguishing the two projects as one is like a historical record keeping and your project is like neighborhoods. But I think you're missing what Matt said at the beginning of this discussion, which is that there already are neighborhoods and they're based on history. And I think also you're leaving out the part where when you present this map to the community today, they can redraw the boundaries and rename the districts with names and boundaries today that are not based on necessarily historical boundaries or names. And so I think it's really important that the commissioners understand these specifics of the two projects. Madeline's project has fluid boundaries. Neighborhood community members can go to Madeline and establish a neighborhood in any direction they want. They can name it whatever they want. If the neighbor down the street does the same thing and the neighborhoods overlap, because I asked Madeline this question when she first explained her project to me, and a house or a street could be in multiple neighborhoods at once, that's fine. And if people change their mind down the road and new leaders want to emerge and draw new boundaries and have new names, those are now the new neighborhoods. And I think that this is, first of all, I don't think the project the commission started is a records keeping project. I think record keeping is part of it. It was a neighborhood designation project. And so what you're describing is also a neighborhood designation project. The difference is that the project the commission started is a neighborhood designation project based on what already is from history to today. Broadway Strayer Heights, Arapahoe Acres, Broadway Heights. These are neighborhoods that real estate agents use when advertising houses. They are neighborhoods that people reference already in the community. And they are neighborhoods that this commission wants to give historical significance to and put up signs.
Although I
So
bring up though, Helena, we did start out merging with Madeline. I mean, that was where, so from the get-go, I was involved with the nitpicky, what was that house block number, whatever, title and everything. Got too overwhelmed. When all three of us got together, and with your IT background, you were saying, well, gosh, if we had so many different neighborhoods, we'd end up with like 40 neighborhoods rather than the 28 we have. And it was like, so we did meld some stuff together. That's where Broadway Strayers got kind of clumped into Bates Logan. That's where Arapahoe Acres got kind of blunked into Romans Park. And we tried to honor the districts, the city council districts that could also change. And yet right now we're using those as kind of a fixed thing. So I have to be honest, I even think our historic aspect got a little melded weird in like, but the way you documented everything is awesome. So we've got those pieces, but I think what we're presenting is this meld that goes in with Madeline's community neighborhoods. And so
the problem though is that Madeline's project has fluid boundaries that change. And so the history that we've compiled geographically doesn't relate to your new boundaries.
No, but I'm just saying ours didn't 100% honor the historic areas.
I agree with you. And actually, I think that I would suggest there's 3 areas where one was Broadway Strayers, which we did add to the map. We have it on our map. Madeline does not have it on hers. The other 2 areas that I know that concerned you was Arapahoe Acres, which we also parsed out after the commission voted on the map. So we have pulled Arapahoe Acres out. Broadway Heights, we ended up cutting in half as a compromise with Madeline. And that's something that I know CJ didn't like. And I would propose that we go back and revisit and make sure that those 3 decisions are more accurate to history and less of a compromise that we made to work with Madeline's project. So we did make compromises to work with Madeline's project, but it's not going to work in the long run because they're kind of both trying to do the same thing in completely different ways. Both projects are trying to establish neighborhoods. One is trying to honor the historic neighborhoods and promote those in the community. And the other is trying to establish new neighborhoods and promote those in the community. And I think we'd be doing our community a disservice to both charge forward in this way. I think we need to figure out how to work together.
Here, let me jump in here real fast because I mean, so I can see the point. I can see the point here that's getting raised, right? CJ, what you had mentioned was completely accurate, right? I mean, we have a lot of subdivisions, that date back to this end, this end of the city that both Melinda and I are in. Those date back to 1880. Some of them, and some of them are small, some of them are big. There's always going to be probably the requirement for compromise here. Denver went through this when they named their neighborhood. They had to do that. So I don't think we can hold exactly to the historic boundaries, but I mean, from my perspective here, what it seems like is very little, if any, of the historic neighborhoods were included in the final kind of designation. It was more or less based around parks, and parks have a very short history in our city. Bates Logan Park, these others just haven't been around very long. And so that I don't know. I struggle with this.
I will say that many residents who come to me and say, I want to get my neighborhood organized. And then I say, okay, great, let's draw boundaries and let's name the neighborhoods. They're very much like, I don't know. So if we had this type of starter map, I think that I know that they would completely embrace it. And of course, there would be some neighborhoods who would want to rename themselves or draw different boundaries, but overall, a lot of the community will embrace the history and also find it like very, very interesting, and want to honor it.
But the
think South
redrawing
Broadway
of
Heights,
neighborhoods is problematic. Like, what if you redraw a neighborhood? What if somebody comes to you and doesn't love the history and wants to redraw the neighborhood and cut Arapahoe Acres in half? Are you going to challenge them, or does Arapahoe Acres get cut in half?
It will not get cut in half. There is a process to get a neighborhood registered, and part of the process is sending out postcards, having some type of neighborhood meeting in order to approve neighborhood names and boundaries and things like
I
that.
just wonder why the commission, the Historic Preservation Commission, isn't more of, like, why we're not more involved in this process. And it just worries, it seems like people who coordinate with you and have access to you are going to be drawing neighborhoods in Inglewood, essentially erasing history. And so when we first started, you had made a distinction between our two projects. You had said that ours is a record keeping project and yours is a neighborhood project. The literature, the mailer that came out a couple weeks ago characterized your project as a resources project, and it boasted 7 new neighborhoods. And I just want to be clear, if there's 7 new neighborhoods, it's on land that's been here a lot longer than the neighborhoods. So I wonder where those 7 new neighborhoods are. But if the mailer has characterized your project as a resources project, and it's really a community organizing project, maybe what the solution lies in distinguishing the projects as ours is a historic neighborhood project and yours is a community organizing project. And that way you can have all the fluidity you want. People can overlap and intersect and organize all day long, but it doesn't change the physical intersections of historic neighborhoods when they do it. I'm not sure it's necessary for the community to designate boundaries of their neighborhood as part of their organizing function. And I argue that it erases history to have that fluidity.
Well, and I'll also say one thing here real fast too. But I think CJ, you wanted to say something. You jumped in there a minute ago. But
I mean, again, that the idea that the word neighborhood has been used for fluid and fixed historic, and I think that's going to be where some of the confusion comes from. Because if we're confused, can you imagine what the public is going to respond to? And but the idea that we wanted historic input for some people that have lived here and have said, oh, this area, it says Signal Hill, but we really called it blah. I mean, that's what I had hoped to get from people. But because of this overlap with Madeline's project, with the community organizing neighborhood versus the historic neighborhood, now that terminology is confusing people, just like it's.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I'm specifically concerned with here is that if we have 2 names for an area, one that is officially designated by the city, which is defined differently than what actually exists right now. Which one do we do? Which one? I mean, honestly, when this idea first came about, we were hoping that the city would be able to invest a little bit of money in putting the second sign above street sign saying you're in Broadway Strayers Heights. You're in, South Broadway Heights or the Swedish Craig area or the, Ironworks area or, Cherylin or these other areas. And I guess my concern specifically with this is I associate with Broadway Strayers Heights. It is known. It's not confusing. I can look at my title of my property and it says subdivision, Broadway Strayer Heights. That information is already there and already exists. Now, I understand the matter of compromise here. Broadway Heights, both South Broadway Heights on the other end of the city and Broadway Strayers Heights, those are large areas. There's, it's very easy to define Cinderella City. It's very easy to define some of these others. Very, very easy to define Arapahoe Acres. But by creating a countermeasure that's a name that was developed, Bates Logan Park, that dates to the late 1960s. there's not a tremendous amount of history there. Jason Park, similar, most of the parks in the city were developed around the mid 1960s to late 1960s. That's more recent history. So we're defining names of our community more aligned with parks than it is actually the subdivisions that truly exist.
Yeah.
Well, could I just point out too, that part of the original legislation that created the historic preservation, that our job was to like foster civic pride in our history in our neighborhoods and educate the public on what our history and neighborhoods is about. And this is actually an educational project, if you will.
I agree. I think we're all working towards the same end goal here. I'd love for a neighborhood to have Broadway Stairs Heights on their street signs. And I think what Helene said earlier is what I was trying to describe, that this is historical record keeping, and then there's also a community outreach effort that the city would like to also conduct. I don't know, Eric, if you can talk about it a little bit more, because I know that we've talked about it at length also.
Yeah, no, and like Madeline said, it's working both towards the same end goal. And I think that I guess my question would be, so if somebody wanted to, in the neighborhood organization efforts, wanted to go through the process of saying renaming or identifying different boundaries of a certain neighborhood, one, I think that would probably need to be a public process of some sort with public outreach. And two, I guess I am envisioning them coexisting. Let's say if a couple subdivisions want to get together and say, I could be way across town, but Idlewild and Broadway Heights want to get together and create a neighborhood group, they would be still kind of utilizing those historic boundaries to create that neighborhood. And if there is some overlap, I guess I don't necessarily see a problem with that. If the historic preservation goal is to get those neighborhoods identified by street signs eventually. I mean, you could still be in the historic district of Idlewild, but be in a neighborhood group that encompasses encompasses something larger than that.
I think that you made a clear distinction there, though. You called it a neighborhood group. Had you just called it a neighborhood, I think that's the problem, because you can't be in Arapahoe Acre, the neighborhood of Arapahoe Acres, and also be in another neighborhood and not be confused.
Well, I'll bring up Marion, South Marion is 2 blocks. Half of it is Arapahoe Acres and half of it isn't. They are their own. I wouldn't be surprised if they've already, or they're going to submit a request to be a neighborhood when they do block parties. It's just those 2 city blocks.
But they're not 2 neighborhoods. That's the problem I'm having, is that we voted on a map. So we have the same end goal, right? And we worked on a map, the 3 of us, and then we voted on it as a commission unanimously. By the next meeting, Madeline had already changed the map. A neighbor had come to her. There was no public forum. Boundaries were redrawn and neighborhood was renamed. It wasn't, Eric, a public forum issue. It was a Madeline and her group decision. And it rewrote a map that we as a commission already voted on. So the idea that it's not gonna create problems is unrealistic, because already 7 new neighborhoods have popped up in the last few months. So it's happening rapidly. Madeline's group is rapidly designating and naming neighborhoods that are new conventions, while CJ and I have been trying to find the established boundaries. So there is a conflict here that I think we do need to take the time to resolve clearly. Just saying we have the same end goal in mind isn't going to see us through the conflicts that these 2 objectives actually have, in my opinion. I do not think, personally, I do not like the idea of new neighborhoods being drawn in the context of Madeline's group I don't like it. I don't mind neighborhood groups being established, community groups being established, like interest groups, similar interest groups being established. I don't care about any of that. But to call something a neighborhood out of the blue and give it boundaries and give it a name, overriding what's already there without a public forum when we're working on a project to establish neighborhoods is problematic.
That might be a great way to look at it also. I was talking to a neighborhood group leader, and we looked at the historical map, and there was like 2,000 residences in the boundary. And that was just too much for him. You know, he said to have, you know, neighborhood events and things with 2,000 residences, it's just too much. So he was maybe going the route of calling it an association or calling it some type of neighborhood group. So that could also be a route that we also go. But that's kind of where we are at. And we only have 2 registered neighborhoods. I'm not sure where the 7 is coming from. That's all.
It's from the
Also.
mailer that we got a couple weeks ago. It boasted 7 new neighborhoods. It didn't give any more details. So
Interesting.
open the mailer. Well, I think that is the solution. And so if you're willing to distinguish your project as a community organizing project, as a groups project, as an associations project, or as it was billed in the mailer, a resources project. So it was billed as that as well. And ours can be distinguished as like neighborhood boundaries. And then we can continue to work towards the ends of having signage and creating these like districts and potentially some of them getting historical designation. So it really plays into the conversations we just had about code and things like that too. Like some of these areas can be just historically significant with no repercussions to that designation other than to build community pride, which is one of our initiatives. I think that's a good solution. And then additionally, and I'll make this really quick, Melinda had told me, and she just stepped away, I hope she can still hear, she had told me that the city of Denver had at one point offered us use of one of their digital tools for performing a geographical inventory. It's a pretty robust tool. And I know that you also have a tool that works for the project that you have in mind. So it's like a really good tool for like drawing around these communities. But I think for CJ's interest in having more of an oral tradition starting to be recorded, because what CJ and I documented was information from maps that we organized geographically. In order to capture oral tradition in a really meaningful way, I think that the tool that Melinda said Denver would give us access to is a really good tool for that. So we do have like more to discuss moving forward in ways that we can capture that oral history, which was part of, I think it was part of your project, but I think that maybe that can move over more into our project. And we can organize that oral history using a tool like the one that Melinda shared with me. Because I'm not sure how you're going to track it. I don't want to discourage you from tracking it, but I'm not sure how it works, how tracking the oral history works with your project. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there.
I don't think that originally when we thought of this together, we were thinking of like neighborhood boundaries and then asking the community for historical, if they knew any more history about the neighborhoods and to submit photos and anything, newspaper clippings, anything like that, and then to put it all into a story map. And now we're kind of talking about 2 separate projects. So we can definitely still put all of the history into a story map. And then we'll just, the neighborhood map, if it changes and things like that, probably won't go into the official story map. But yeah, I like the idea of neighborhood groups also. I can't necessarily commit that that's what we're going to do. I don't know if we're still going to launch the community engagement effort for the neighborhoods, but that's, I guess, why we're here. And I like that idea moving forward also.
In Arapahoe Acres, we call it neighborhood network.
Yeah.
That idea that it's the fluid part is different than the historic neighborhood. The idea
Yeah,
that
they're two different maps. The historic map and then the community outreach neighborhood map.
because
That's
even
the way
Broadway
that
Sprayers,
I see it.
3 different groups, right?
I'm just kind of curious here. And well, so where does the information go at the end? I mean, we've talked a little bit about community groups and things like that, but where does this information go? How does the city view the information? Does the city understand that Bates Logan is not actually the area, it is just a group or community group, or is that actually going to be published as you got District 1, which is largely Bates Logan, so now we're going to call this officially Bates Logan Park? That's what I'm really worried about here, because it's almost going to be, I guess my entire concern is that we're going to whitewash over the actual real historic neighborhood that exists with a new name that was arbitrarily chosen in a short period of time. And I'm not saying that your work was not beneficial. I mean, what you're doing is great. I think that's a fantastic thing for the community, but I'm just very concerned that we are adjusting modern day Inglewood and not looking back at what actually exists.
Which is interesting
And
because when Cinderella City, well, technically that was the Tuileries, right? So then the idea was, where do we honor and what decade do we honor, or what century?
Sure.
Because there's also spirit part. It's now 6, anyway.
No, and I know through the community engagement effort, a lot of the messaging will focus on how this map was created and what history went into it. I mean, we want to conserve all of this history. So there will definitely be tons of messaging, and all of the feedback will be taken, and things like that. We just definitely want to reach out to everyone in Englewood, so everyone kind of is able to give their input and participate in this citywide process.
But how to differentiate? So
Yeah, it's getting muddled again, Madeline. So if we're doing the historic project and you're doing the community organizing project, why is your project going so deep into history? Maybe it would be better to focus on like the community organizing of today and like send the history our way, and we can keep expanding on what we've started, and potentially using the interface that Melinda introduced to me, that we have to see if Denver still stands, but it's actually very sophisticated way of inventorying landmarks, historic neighborhoods, all the way down to the plot to plot. So we could really make sense of that history in an organized way. If we're doing that, if we're doing a historic neighborhoods project and we have all that history, and you're also like, it just seems like it muddles them. Can we separate them further? And really, I think maybe what Matt is also ultimately trying to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we want to be part of establishing the official neighborhoods of Inglewood. And so if we're over here doing our neighborhood project and the city's ignoring us and they're just going with whatever neighborhoods your project has, we haven't fully separated the projects yet. Like, that's our stake in it. Like, we want to be able to say, this is Broadway Strayer Heights, this is Arapahoe Acres, this is the signage. Yeah, we want to be able to have some, that's what we want to be working on as a commission.
Well, and
We
yeah, I
are
mean,
the Historic Preservation Commission, and we'd like to preserve some history.
Yes.
we started
I'm
this
all
part.
about preserving history. I just am working on the communications team, and we just want to get community, participation in this if it's going to be the official map. That is all.
Okay. Well, and actually, yeah, we spent a lot of time on this, but we haven't heard from some of the other members on the commission. I'd like to, with your permission, Melinda, can we open the floor up to see what everybody else's opinion is on this?
Yes,
Cash,
please.
Jason.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what the concern is. I guess what what do we do about it? I mean, we've been discussing it at length, and I get what the concern is, but what action can we or should we take? I'm open to suggestions. I'm not saying that to be a smart aleck.
Yeah, I'm kind of same boat, open to suggestions. And then I also know this, is a project that started well before I came on board. So I know there's people that, or have been putting a lot more hours into it. So I'm more invested. So it's kind of, some ways hard to say, but yeah, again, I recognize what the concerns are, just kind of, I'm not sure what a solution is, but perhaps it is what kind of came up earlier, a matter of semantics of what kind of things are called, to just slot them into parallel kind of things that the community both wants their history and also identify what their community is.
Well, and one other question
something-
I have, this being the 21st century, no matter how many maps we have and how much history we've compiled and so forth, it's got to be housed somewhere. And we're not writing a book for the library. We want it to be accessible to all the citizens. So we'd like it on the city's webpage. Actually, we'd like to have a web page for the Historic Preservation Commission that we could link to various things, like the landmark application and things like that. Is the city got the bandwidth to help with any of this?
I assume so. That had been, I think, one of the conclusions I'd drawn from an earlier discussion that we had as a group, that a lot of this information will be housed on our website and be available publicly. Kind of like envisioning, say, for example, here's a map of what has been determined to be the historical neighborhoods, which you can then click on, and then that would take you to another page which shows a little bit more of the depth of that neighborhood. And that's where the public outreach would come in for the historical aspect, was that people would be able to come to you and provide pictures, documents, et cetera, and things like that, that we could add to that portion of the webpage. So when you click on the historical neighborhood, then you're going to get kind of a wealth of information regarding what went on here in the past, historic-wise. And that was kind of the thought I had envisioned after our discussions. So let me know if I'm wandering astray on that, or if I...
No, that gives you a good base, but then now we've got the neighborhood groups that might have pictures of a block party or, a chalk art festival or whatever, that now is different.
I think,
or even dominating the discussion. That's the thing, is when you take this, and I understand the whole community aspect to this, and this is really great. I mean, it's reaching out. Let's get opinions, let's get ideas, but the loudest voices are the ones that oftentimes win in those situations. And that doesn't necessarily define what is actually, it's just what is said. It's the individual or the group or the people that come together. And I don't know how we fix that in this case.
No, let's fix it.
well, I think that we're really narrowing in on it. I think that, the Communities Project is about today, families today, communities today. And I think that sharing information about today on that map makes a lot of sense. And then routing the history to us to make sense of for our project makes sense. And that way they're sort of separated, not just in name and not just semantically, but also, inherently with the content that they showcase. The Community Organizing Project is a very contemporary snapshot of Inglewood. And then the Historic Project is just that. And there's ways that we could accept submissions from the community for the historic information, for the oral traditions, the pictures and all of that. We could set up a submission button on the website and they could submit it, and those submissions could come to us as a commission, and we can sort through them and decide where they go and file them. And we can use that software that we were talking about that's really set to like catalog and inventory neighborhoods and geography. So I think that we just have to, like, there has to be agreement with the city and with our commission to keep our projects separate, to call them distinct things, and to stay in distinct lanes. And I think by doing that, we'll be performing a service for our community ultimately, and avoiding what could be just a lot of confusion otherwise.
You're muted, CJ.
How do you feel about that, Madeline?
I'm taking notes. I feel great about that. I hate to say this, I don't know if I'm super clear with what the 2 lanes are, if we keep the 2 lanes with the neighborhoods and the historical project. Like I said, I see the historical map as a historical map, and that is that version. And then we'll take the historical map as the neighborhoods and just bring it to the community. And I guess, for lack of a better term, modernize it if residents see different neighborhoods in that.
I don't think that's it. I don't think that's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Well, I think that our map would be working towards established neighborhoods that are recognized by the city. And your project is a community group project where community members can come in and form groups, but not change the map. The community members aren't coming to you to change the map. We voted on a map unanimously
But even then,
in
Helene,
2020, and you changed it right away. Where there was no vote when the map got changed. A community member came to you and asked to redraw the map that we voted on, and you redrew it. So like, that's what would, if we were to stay in our lanes, there wouldn't be any more of that.
Okay, let me pose this question for this. So let's say you've got your historic map that you've agreed upon for the historic districts. So in terms of the neighborhood community, I'm trying to think of how best to phrase this, but sometimes it would, due to current day circumstances, maybe it wouldn't be the most logical idea to have a neighborhood group based on old subdivision boundaries.
Sure.
You know, as things have changed over time, you know, it might not make sense from a community development standpoint to, you know, basically wall off a certain district and basically have to say that's the neighborhood community you need to be. I mean, think of it as kind of like, this is how I'm viewing this, is like you have your historical map, but then you also have your kind of neighborhood group map, which you could see as like a zoning overlay, if you will. So like we have multiple zone districts, but we also have a zoning overlay which crosses multiple zone districts. I'm kind of viewing this and the outcomes of these 2 projects as kind of looking similar to that, where it's like, yeah, you have the Broadway, Strayer Heights, et cetera, neighborhood group, but you also have another map which you could like overlay it on top of your historic districts that's going to include portions of historic districts. I don't think that after you say you go through the approval process of approving this historic map that you've worked on, that those boundaries are just going to immediately be changed from a historic perspective. I think the projects could overlap in terms of a map, if you will.
Well, what about this? And because I really do respect and understand as I understand Madeline's intent to be, you want to have, and to the example that you provided, the individual kind of small community that when you look at the historic map, that's a huge area, 2,000 houses, whereas this little small pocket is maybe 100 or maybe 50 or maybe 25. If we, I mean, all things said, if we had, say for instance, I keep saying Broadway Strayer Heights only because I live in that area, but the neighborhood is Broadway Strayer Heights with community groups or community pockets within that can associate individually, but you're still respecting and understanding that your property records state Broadway Strayer Heights as the subdivision and community. That's not changing and that's not getting confusing. And then you still have the community opportunity there for instance, I could be in you could make Bates Logan, because I'm just a few blocks away from Bates Logan. We're the Bates Logan community within the Broadway Strayer Heights neighborhood. And then
or the other way around, actually, I was going to say pretty much the same thing, that so we have the sometime in the future we have Strayer Broadway Heights Historic District, and it is contained within Bates Logan, but it has its own identity within that.
And really and kind of further go down in context with this, Madeline, is the intent here is if we want to designate areas as historic, which many of these are, it makes it very difficult if there's a competing name that exists. So that's the caution, I guess the red flag that's getting thrown up here is if we have fluid boundaries and fluid names and areas that are defined that are fluid but not fluid, but hard to change once they're really set because they're defined. How does that work with designating specific areas as historic?
Well, I guess kind of for examples on stuff that comes up with the National and State Register, a lot of these times the naming conventions is based off of what it was known as during its period of significance. And, a lot of the times, a lot of the buildings, even buildings or ranches or whatever, usually have multiple names, and the forms usually kind of reflect that. It has, believe ours does too, where it has historic name and then it has other names below it. So, I mean, sometimes we have, most typically you see it like with ranches where it may have like 5 different names over it because it's been around since 1870 and stuff. So, I guess as far as historic designation under landmarks or if we're pursuing other things, it recognizes that historic name when it earned its significance. And I don't know if we'd really run into too much of the concerns that are coming up here, but perhaps there could be confusion. But just kind of speaking from other examples of historic districts and stuff around the state.
Okay. Well, I mean, it seems we're taking a lot of time on this, and I don't know if we can define the solution right now, but this is just simply expressing the concern with this is the competing names I don't think will turn out well, personally. And I don't know how we get around that, but it's just simply a concern.
I felt it was important to air our concerns and
I think it's great. So thank you. And we can continue this discussion, I guess, next meeting, and Eric and I can talk offline and things like that. So.
Well, if I can do one thing too, Madeline, it's not just you, it's the communications group. Does Helena and I need to sit down with the bigger group so that they all hear what we're talking about? Do you know what I'm saying?
I'm not sure. I just may not be. Now I think I'm understanding it a little bit better. Maybe I haven't been communicating it well to them.
So you don't feel we need to meet with them?
We might. Eric, do you have?
I was just going to say, have we even gotten to the point, Madeline, in your project where somebody has come forward with a request to change a specific neighborhood name or anything like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have. Okay.
Times, yeah.
I don't think they have.
We changed the boundary of Cushing Park Cushing Park.
I did make that smaller, and I think I did that before we presented the map. So that was on me, and I do.
After. It was actually the next month. We had voted on the map, and that month you had moved the boundary. And you said that you renamed a new, you established a new neighborhood after we had voted on the map. You had cut one of the neighborhoods we voted in half. I don't know who you did it with.
Well,
and
I
then
think
you named it something.
just as a real quick point of order, we don't need to define, we need to define a path going forward here, and in a way that this is going to result in a compromise, but it needs to be a compromise that's based upon, I think, all parties involved, be it whatever way it is. But let's look at the path going forward as to how we get there.
But Eric, I just do want to confirm to you that it has happened. And also, I think part of our plan with the map that we've been working on and we voted on was to ultimately bring it to a public forum. So I just want to make that clear to you that that was part of our process, is actually to go officially through the process. So I just wanted to make that clear. And I agree with that we can do the overlays. I see your vision there. My only issue is when we call the different layers of the overlays the same thing: neighborhood, neighborhood, neighborhood. I think the overlays need to have different names other than neighborhood, like community group or association, or what did you say, Matt? I thought it was great.
Oh, darn it, I can't remember.
But any one of those terms, just something different than neighborhoods. I think we need to preserve the term neighborhood for the more established, based in history, gone through the public forum, gets the signage, that those to me are the neighborhoods, and the other things are like groups and associations.
Oh, I would say historic district is a better term that can be within a neighborhood.
And that's modeled after how Denver's done it too.
Yeah.
The historic Park Hill neighborhood, or the historic, that's all I want to think of.
Congress
But
Park.
Congress Park, exactly.
Yeah,
Not
okay.
everything that we, on the map that we worked on, not everything is historic though. So some of the neighborhoods, like we basically figured out 28 neighborhoods. And we did take into consideration their pinnacle in history, as you said, Jason. We considered that, and we considered their use today as well, Eric, which you brought up. So those were like considered, not perfectly so, but we considered them. And then the idea was, and then we voted on it, and the idea was to take it to the city council and have them look it over and open it up to the community at large. And not all of those neighborhoods are historic. So some of them would get historic designation, some of them would just be neighborhoods. But they wouldn't be fluid boundaries at that point, because they would have had the public buy-in, they would have had our eye on them. And so we're trying to like establish non-fluid neighborhoods to some degree. And so, yeah.
Well, how about this? Madeline, you had mentioned both you and Eric. I think we made our point. Can you take this offline and kind of let us know where you come back with? We're asking for and looking for a middle ground and a compromise that really allows the work we've already done to be incorporated.
Sure.
That sounds great.
Absolutely. Yeah. We will brainstorm and get back to you. I do like the idea of identifying them as historic districts, and that might help avoid some confusion between historic districts and neighborhood groups. But yeah, I'll talk with Madison and communications, and we'll see what we can come up with to move forward.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you for all your input.
Yep.
Great. Let's we don't have a whole lot of time left in our meeting, so let's do press on for now. I wanted to ask Jason about the application for the grant for the survey, whether you have everything you need, whether you've gotten any more.
Yeah, so with the, oh, Eric was gonna say something?
Yeah, so we did get a letter of recommendation or approval from the city manager for the grant application. So Jason, when you're ready to are ready to move forward with that application, I can go ahead and forward that to you.
Okay, yeah, that's great news. I think we have everything we need. So if it's okay with everybody and Eric, what I'll do is I'll kind of pull together all the materials that I have, the draft language for the application itself, the letters, and send that to Eric, and then we can coordinate on when the city, you're filling that out for the city, and you know, it's on an online form that can be saved. So if you come across a section that you're not sure of, you could just you know, reach out to me. But I can send you that chunk of stuff and the link to the application, and we can get on doing that.
Perfect. Yeah, if you're good to go, we can go ahead and start get that application submitted. I did hear from someone recently that it's taken about 30 days to review the grant submittals at this time.
Yeah, for those rolling ones, it's probably about that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I just viewed a presentation on applying for grants from SHF, and part of what I learned from that is, oh, I'm so glad Jason's around to make this easier for us. So, because yeah, it was definitely making my head spin.
Nope, we'll be good to go. I'll get that stuff to Eric.
All right. And on the Scarrett House, Lauren did say that all of the documents are on our Google Drive. If anybody had any comments on the thing, I didn't. Other than I think we can probably add some photographs just coming out of Google Maps or something like that. We don't actually have to have a fine day and go down there with our cameras. Unless Google's copyrighted them.
Yeah, I guess I'd perhaps recommend that we just wait for next meeting to hear, so Lauren can hear those comments and you know, what she's done. She may have taken photographs or things like that. So I'd recommend when she's available, kind of going over anybody's comments.
Yeah, I had a look at what was there already, and it's, I say, pretty complete. Just, I think, just lacks photographs, basically. And I'm not sure how many, or like say, at least the present owners are happy to be going ahead with it.
I can't say happy, but they're willing to go ahead with it.
They're willing, okay, yeah.
It was one more thing for them to have to do, of course, if they needed to do something. And I said, at this point, you don't have to do anything.
That I thought, well, because the other, and I had a note about that it's been granted a preservation easement back a number of years ago.
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what it meant when it was granted either.
It means that the entity that holds the easement has approval on alterations to the building. It's from Historic Denver, and their easements are typically just building envelopes, so it only concerns the outside of the building. Other properties may have interior, but so any alterations that they plan to do, they have to go to Historic Denver for approval, make sure that it meets the interior standards for rehabilitation.
Which was interesting because Historic Denver, when I talked to them, said that everything was sold when they sold the land.
Maybe transferred. Yeah, I don't know what the easement story is there.
But nonetheless, they're honoring, the chiropractic firm is honoring the easement.
That's the important part then, yeah.
Okay, so this is tabled.
Yeah. And we already discussed the new business here, so moving on, staff's choice. Eric, did you have anything? Madeline?
The only thing I had is I got some, not some, just one piece of mail, a package for the Englewood Historic Society that ended up in my office. And I know that's happened in the past, and I would just bring the stuff to Matt. But since in the time of COVID, I want to get that package to whoever it needs to go to. So Matt, are you still my guy on that? You're on mute.
Paul Skaczynski, right?
Sorry, muted. Yeah, I can take it. Or Paul. It may be easier for me to come down right now than Paul. If there's a time that you're at City Hall, are you at City Hall right now? Are the open offices back up?
Yeah, so offices are open. We're operating at a limited, reduced staff capacity. So I'm in the office every other week and working remotely the other week. So I'm in the office this week, and then I'll be working remotely next week. So
But isn't the main gist, it just goes to the library, Matt, and that's where Paul picks up stuff? So you can just get
Actually,
it to
yeah,
the library?
that's a good point, CJ. The proper place is actually the library. I wonder how that got to you. That was funny.
who should I give it to in the library? Is there a specific person I should make sure I hand it to so it gets into
They
the
know that we have a box there.
We do
Okay.
have a box there, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, CJ. That's a valid point, because technically I think most of the mail for the city goes through the library. Am I right on that?
That's what I was told.
Yeah. So anyway, nonetheless, we do have a box there, but yeah, I can come down and pick it up from the library, or if you prefer, I can pick it up from you. Either one. I mean,
Doesn't
whatever.
matter. I can run it down to the library tomorrow.
Yeah, that works. And I'll just pick it up from the library, because I'll probably have some time on Friday to go.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
That was all I had for staff's choice. Oh, also, I was going to ask, I know some of you had attended the Saving Places conference. I think 3 of you, Jason, CJ, and Melinda. And I was going to ask if you could maybe for an agenda item next time, just have like a little bit of a discussion of like if there was any interesting presentations or anything that you would like to share with the group from the conference. That was the thought that I had.
And one thing that's really cool, I found out, so I had to work during the whole conference, so I wasn't able to attend anything, but they're archiving it, so anybody that had signed up gets to see it for a whole year. So I watched number 3 today. Melinda was there from the get-go, I guess, and Jason, I don't know, were you there from the get-go too?
Oh yeah, throughout, not everything, but.
Now by
Lauren
email.
was there part of the time. At least I saw her in one of the sessions that I was in.
What's that?
Lauren was there, or somebody named Lauren Cooper was there.
No, Lauren said she was coming as part of work, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, there were some very interesting things. And
Hey,
of
we
course,
can't just send around the agenda, Eric, and each one of us sign what we want to present? Or is that considered a meeting?
I tell you what, if those of you who attended, if you want to just email me individually, and I can just forward those on to Melinda when she crafts the agenda.
okay.
Sounds good.
But how would we know? So if Jason picked all the ones I picked.
I will let you know.
Right.
If there's overlap, I'll get back to you and say, hey, you two pick these two. Do you want to have a conversation among yourself about who wants to take what? Yeah, I think I'll be pretty easy to navigate.
I am making a note.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, no problem.
Good idea. Thank you.
And then unless that was all I had, unless Madeline had anything for staff's choice.
Yeah.
I do not.
All right. Well, and if we're going to rehash the one thing I have to mention though, because like I say, one thing I learned at the conference is that the Cherry-Lynn horse car is not the only trolley car that ever served Inglewood. There was also the Loretto Heights Railway, and which was actually in operation before Inglewood was a city.
And it was horse-drawn?
Yeah, another
And the
horse
horse-
drawn.
Did the horse ride the
And it
back
went
down?
along Hamden, all the way out actually to Fort Logan almost, with a spur up Federal to take the students to Loretto Heights. And it was owned by the Archdiocese. And there was, the CDOT has a whole GIS project of historic trolleys. And I emailed CJ and Helene with the link to that because it was really fascinating. And say Inglewood is included on that. But one of the things that they had on their webpage was a time slider that you could advance the time through and see when, where the thing appeared and when it died out and so forth, and go through time with it. And I'm just thinking, oh, if we could do something like that with our historic maps, or our map of Inglewood, so that when a new section was annexed, it appears all of a sudden.
I think this is exactly what Eric was wanting us to talk about at the next meeting.
Yeah. So let's be sure to talk about that. Are we ready to adjourn? More than ready? Is there a motion to adjourn? I'll move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
All right, so meeting adjourned at 8:26.
All right, yes.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Great to
Thanks,
see you
everybody.
all being here with us.
Bye.
So I just gave them to Mia. Oh, right? I was like.
I'm leaving.